Good evening, little masters, and welcome to episode 352 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where, well, the king does not permit brawls in his house, but men are freer outside, Matt.
Yeah, and I'm not going to walk out unarmed with you, for sure. I've seen you. You're the kind of guy who goes to the gym a lot, so I don't know what I'm walking into.
One punch Helm right there.
That's right. Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm Matt, the nerd of the rings, and I'm here with the man of the West, who has grown big since I was last here, but it is mostly fat, I guess. Alan Sisto.
You have said much already, Matt, and it is my turn to speak. Folks, join us as we shift gears a bit and jump forward to Appendix A2 to talk about a house where brigands drink in the reek and their brats roll on the floor among the dogs. That's right, folks. It's time to look at the House of Eorl.
Yeah,
they need a doggy door.
Really, they should. They should have a doggy door. They need one of those Roombas, to go around and clean up all the dog hair and stuff.
That's right.
But folks, no matter how you arrived, you're all welcome here in the common room at the Prancing Pony podcast. We are reading and talking our way through Middle-earth with plenty of speculation. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, bad jokes along the way.
There are a few of those. But we do love our deep dives into the lore, and boy, are the appendices exactly that this season. We also love discussing our favorite themes and moments in the story and a whole lot more.
But we try to keep it light and fun, like a couple friends chatting at the pub, and we're glad you've joined us.
I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to catch up a bit with my new co-host for the next 10 or 12 episodes, Matt from the Nerd of the Rings. He was here with us last week for Questions After Nightfall, but now it's a chance for me to catch up and ask him a few questions. So, Matt, the last time you were here on the Prancing Pony podcast, Gollum had taken the ring from Frodo before taking a little tumble off the cliff. Now, a lot has happened, my friend, since last February. What have you been up to since then?
Man, so we had a second season of Rings of Power, so lots of coverage for that. Yeah. Lots of nights where I did not get a lot of sleep.
Oh, that's right. You did the live watch parties, which were 3 a.m. your time.
Yeah, the watch parties were 3 a.m. That's when they started, and I really hope they don't do that again, because that's pretty awful time. That's a terrible time. Yeah, I'm no marketing director or, programming person for streaming platforms, but just as someone who lives on the East Coast, in the East Coast time zone, please don't do that again.
What about other stuff besides Rings of Power? Because that was really only the last, couple of months.
Well, going back a bit further, we were both at San Diego Comic-Con.
That's right.
This summer. Yeah, so gosh, it was last February.
Yeah. February was when we threw the ring into the volcano. You and I were probably recording that in January, but as far as
that's
our
true.
listeners.
So I was trying to remember if I had gone to New Zealand when.
No, you had not.
Yet. I had not. Okay, so we probably chatted a bit.
Yeah. So tell us about that New Zealand trip, because that was pretty amazing.
Oh my gosh. That's a pilgrimage, for folks like us. That is an absolute pilgrimage. If you ever, folks, have the chance to go to Hobbiton, it is the highlight for me. Like, everything was cool, and like going to Wellington and seeing Weta Workshop. Yeah,
because you got some real inside scoop stuff too, didn't you? You got to actually talk.
Yeah. I've gotten to know some of the folks there at Weta, and they're fantastic people, and I really love and admire their work, not just in the films, but like their collectibles and stuff. I absolutely adore their statues. But yeah, the Hobbiton movie set, like, I've never, there's very few times where I've been that level of immersed into a place. And you come around the corner, and it's, where Gandalf and Frodo on the cart enter into Hobbiton, and you get that boom shot that goes up, and it's just like that when you go. That's how they have you enter, is basically reliving that shot. And it's amazing if you ever have the chance. Anyway,
I'm hoping to one of these days. I mean, that's tough, because that's not a trip you can do in just a couple of weeks. I mean, you can, but the travel is so long, the jet lag is so awful that you really need a buffer of 2 or 3 days on either end, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I was there for 3 weeks, which was 3 weeks total, 2 weeks for a tour with red carpet tours through the North Island and South Island, and then a week in Wellington after that. I think 2 weeks is probably like the sweet spot.
Is it? Okay.
I would think, where then you can have time to experience everything. But if you ever find yourself, for whatever reason, if you found yourself in New Zealand for just a few days,
on a plane and landed in Auckland, New Zealand.
Somehow I ended up here. Somehow I ended up in Auckland for 3 days or whatever. Go to Hobbiton, because oh my gosh, that was my favorite day of the whole thing, for sure.
That's amazing. I hope that I get a chance to get there.
I hope you do too.
We've bandied about the idea of having a PPP moot there eventually, but it would have to be maybe in coordination with somebody else, and possibly
you have to plan it way in advance,
and plan it years in advance so that people can save their pennies, because it is not a cheap place to get to by any means.
No, it's not. It's a very long flight. That's one of those things where it's like, oh, I felt like I actually got some good sleep, and then it's like, oh, I still have 5 hours on this plane.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's wild. I even from here, and I'm on the West Coast, it's something like 16 hours, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch the entire extended edition trilogy.
Yeah, and still have time to watch the one of the fan cuts of the Hobbit.
Right. Yeah, like you could have yourself quite the marathon. I would recommend getting some sleep.
Yeah, I would too.
If you were so inclined, you could.
Or if you're like me and cannot sleep on an airplane.
It's tough for me. Yeah, it's tough for me too.
Yeah, I think the only time I ever slept on an airplane was when we made that trip to London and Amazon sent us out there. So we were
yeah.
That was a little nicer, but that's tricky. It's sort of like, thank you very much for exposing me to that. And also, I'm never going to be able to do that on my own. So
right. Yes. So I will never sleep on a plane again.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, you mentioned San Diego Comic-Con. We did have a wonderful time at San Diego Comic-Con, getting to go to a couple of events and just hang around with not only each other, but all the other Tolkien creators that we're friends with. That was a really fun time. Great time catching up with you. But recently I had another chance to work with you in, of all places, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Tell us about your time at Studio Labs with Corey, Maggie, and the team at Rings and Realms.
Yeah, I mean, working, with you guys, that was definitely a highlight. Trying out a lobster roll for the first time, that was kind of fun too. Those are pretty tasty. The hot ones, not the cold ones. So,
okay, anyone
from New England or who travels to New England, I definitely recommend the hot lobster roll, not the cold one. The cold one was weird, but yeah. So we hung out at Studio Lab there, and we got to film a lot of kind of retrospective things on Rings of Power Season 2. One of my favorite moments was when Corey realized that because of process of elimination and how pairings were going, that you and I were going to be together on the Rune storyline segment.
He rejected that out of hand.
And he said, absolutely not. And he switched it up. He would not let you and I.
Combination, right?
Yeah.
Any other combination.
Any other combination of people to talk about Rune, but not me and Alan at the same time.
That was really interesting and also revealing. Yeah.
Yes. I think he has trust issues when it comes to us. I don't know.
Yeah, you should see the look on his face when we were talking about one of the other storylines on the show, because, of course, we each did 3 segments. Yeah. I don't remember now which of the 3 that it was. And I said this, I think it might have been Númenor. I was talking about what a great storyline it was and how I wished we'd had more. And he said, I wish we'd had more as well. And I said, we could have had more. Just drop the Rune storyline. Yeah. I don't know if that line will actually get into the final release of the clip.
Oh my gosh. That I did not realize that, because that was not a segment that I was on with you, because so we each did 3 segments.
No, did you say the same thing?
I brought it up. That's both hilarious. Of my other segments.
That is hilarious. Because you and I did Pelargir together.
Yeah.
Which was a good storyline, but yeah.
I did say it in Pelargir. Yeah. I remember,
that's hilarious. I love it.
I got more subtle with it. Like the first time I was like, well, we could take it, just drop the Rune storyline and we'll have more time. And then the next time I was like, it's like, yeah, if only there was something else that they could have pulled the time from. Oh, man.
It was a lot of fun, though.
That's what he didn't want in the Rune segment.
Correct. Yeah, no wonder he didn't want us both there. We also got to do the fan tracks. I think you and I did a couple of them, one just the two of us and one with James. So, folks, if you want sort of like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 experience when you're watching Rings of Power Season 2, you get those fan tracks from Corey's brands. I don't know whether it's at Rings and Realms or at Signum or at the Collaboratory, but wherever it is, look those up and you can listen to me and Matt, or me, Matt, and James.
Yeah, there's probably some serious ones that other people did, but ours.
We
are
did
not
some
serious
ones, but yeah,
you did a little bit. But
I did a fairly serious one with James, and then I did another one. I think Kirsten and I did episode 1, so that was.
So you're saying it's because of me that ours?
Oh, you are
serious.
a total goof. Yeah, absolutely. You set the tone, my friend. I appreciate it.
That checks out.
That definitely checks out. I don't know about you, but I haven't worked a 17-hour workday in a very long time. That was really wild.
They should do that in 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd already worked the day before on Friday for about, I don't know, about 10 hours.
Oh.
I think it was like, noon to like about almost midnight, like 10 or 11
o'clock. I guess we were there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing the Q&As and I don't know what else. I can't remember. And then, we were there that Saturday.
The second day, though, was a gauntlet.
8 in the morning to 1 in the morning.
Right.
It was so funny. I remember, though, at the end, what did you do for face replacement? Who were you... So on Corey and Maggie's show on Rings and Realms, they do a thing called face replacement. And if you've ever seen that, there's that one moment where Tom Bombadil stands up, turns around, and it's Corey's face. And it's a really cool moment. And Studio Labs does some fantastic work. And we all got to do that. We all got to be somebody else. So, Matt, who were you?
Yeah. So I actually did not do one because
it
was so late. And they were like, oh, didn't you want to stick around for a face replacement? I was like, I had to get up at 6 a.m. for my flight. So I was like, I'm done. I was like, all right. I had to tap out.
I was tired too. I wanted to go back and I was about to, and they said, but do you want to stick around so that you can punch Kemen? And I said, yes.
Oh,
I mean, really, I
that
couldn't say no to that. Yeah. So I think I get to be that Elendil in that moment, but maybe Valandil. I don't know which. I don't know whose face they're going to... I think Elendil.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll find out. That was a lot of fun, though. I really enjoyed working with you and with James and Kirsten, as well as Corey, Maggie, and the team at Rings and Realms. So even though that was just a couple of weeks ago in real time, it wasn't the last trip that you took to the East Coast.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, what I really want to get to in this interview. I understand you just came back from New York Comic Con recently and might have gotten to see a little something. Want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So at New York Comic Con, they had a panel for War of the Rohirrim.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to go to the panel, and then I was on the press line, did some interviews with the cast and crew and writers, producers, a nice collection of folks involved with that film. But yeah, they showed, like any of these Comic Con panels, whether it's San Diego, New York, whatever, they show some exclusive clips that don't get released to the public after the fact, which is, exciting to see things for the first time. And then there's like a hype reel kind of thing. They did show us that there was a video that's come out, I think, where it focuses kind of like on the artwork and stuff. So we saw that one, that promo video went out public. But yeah, we saw a clip, and I'll try to recall this for everybody, even though like, by the time you hear this, you'll be like ready to go see the movie.
Well, the movie came out 2 days ago.
Oh, so so you've probably already seen it.
That's right.
So remember that part in the movie?
We've already seen the movie, but we haven't seen the movie as we're recording this. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. So remember, guys, the part in the movie where Hera like wakes up and can't find Helm, and they're in Helm's Deep, and you see Dunlendings like just freaking out because Helm Hammerhand is killing them with his bare hands, and they're like, like he's not a man, he's a wraith. Like there's like just this air of like what is going on with Helm, because like Hera's looking for him, he's missing, and they show like this silhouette shot of him where he's backlit, and he just looks creepy as heck. Yeah, and it kind of plays into that. Like he's not an actual wraith, no Shadow of Mordor stuff going on here.
No, and we'll talk about that in this episode, right? Because we get to talk about the story of Helm Hammerhand today.
Right. Yeah. Yes. But they play into like visually, it's kind of the you can see how that legend would be born from.
Yeah, because the legend is even that after he died, even after he kind of basically froze to death and was standing there, is that now the wraith of Helm goes around and killing people with fear.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great story. I can't wait to talk about that in the episode. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. It seemed like a nice, creepy clip that, that's unique. We get some creepy stuff in the films, but like this, that for the hero to be the creepy presence. I'm curious, to see how that plays out in the film. I've always thought, that Helm, the way that Helm is seen by the Dunlendings reminds me of John Wick and how he's seen by the bad guys. Yeah. And like it's an interesting, ever since this was pointed out to me, the fact that John Wick is, being the boogeyman, like, he's like the horror film figure in that, but he's the good guy. Like, that's right. It's this nice, really cool reversal, which is part of the reason why I think it works so well. But Helm is kind of like that, where
a little bit. Yeah.
He is just like this.
He's a terror.
Scary. Yeah. This terror of a presence that, he strikes the kind of fear that you would see people react to like the Nazgul with, Well, I mean, as we'll see when we get to that part in the story, he'd blow the horn, and instead of like coming together to defeat him, they're ran. Like, we're out. We're out.
Thanks for letting us know. I appreciate the heads up. Right. We're gone. Yeah. Really, really good stuff. Well, so besides the debut of the War of the Rohirrim, which, like we said, actually came out a couple of days ago by the time this episode airs, and we'll talk about that later as well. Yeah. What other things are you looking forward to, Matt, over the next year in the world of Tolkien? Not just the tail end of 24, which really is just about the War of the Rohirrim. Right. What are the things you're looking forward to in 25?
Yeah. Well, like we were talking a bit earlier, the art of the War of the Rohirrim book comes out in 2025. Daniel Falconer always brings it. Yeah. Does such a good job with those tie-in books. So I'm looking forward to that. Aside from Rohirrim, though, we've got the Tales of the Shire video game. I got to play a little bit of that on my channel. Like the first
I remember seeing
hour.
that was good.
Yeah, I thought I was being so unique because I just naturally started doing voices for all the characters because it's just lower thirds that pop up. Yeah. It's not like actual voice. So I started doing like all these different Hobbit voices. I think everyone who played the game like defaults.
It's kind of hard not to, right? I mean, fun. You're reading Hobbit dialogue, you're hearing Hobbit voices. Yeah. In a way, I respect that decision to leave it just as lower thirds rather than cast voice actors. Even speaking as a voice actor myself, who would have loved to have done that, even though I've never done anything like that, because then you get to use your own imagination. You get to hear the voices in your head the way you want to hear them. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a pretty common thing for those type of cozy games that, you could see that type of game playing really well across different markets and languages. And rather than needing to have a full-on voice cast for every one of those languages, you have the lower thirds, they're translated for the different languages. And then, I'm sure that's a huge save.
I'm sure it's always a massive save. And it also is a massive save in terms of just practical means.
Yeah.
Because now the file sizes are smaller. So, they want this game to be available on multiple platforms. This isn't just a PC or Xbox title, right? This is also a mobile title.
Yeah. And I think Switch will be a big platform for this one.
Switch will be huge. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, basically, wouldn't you say Tales from the Shire is sort of Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley sort of combined in a way?
That's the comparisons that I've heard too. I've not played either of those games, but like the cozy definitely comes... Like, does it? It's very apparent. Cozy is a very apt term when it comes.
I'm looking
to
forward to it. That should be a lot of fun. Well, you know what else I'm looking forward to is you reading the first part of Appendix A2, The House of Eorl.
In the 2510th year of the Third Age, a new peril threatened Gondor. A great host of wild men from the northeast swept over Rhovanion and, coming down out of the Brownlands, crossed the Anduin on rafts. At the same time, by chance or design, the orcs, who at that time before their war with the dwarves were in great strength, made a descent from the mountains. The invaders overran Calenarthon, and Cirion, steward of Gondor, sent north for help. For there had been long friendship between the men of Anduin's Vale and the people of Gondor. But in the valley of the river, men were now few and scattered, and slow to render such aid as they could. At last tidings came to Eorl of the need of Gondor, and late though it seemed, he set out with a great host of riders. Thus he came to the battle of the field of Celebrant, for that was the name of the green land that lay between the Silverlode and the Limelight. There the northern army of Gondor was in peril, defeated in the wold and cut off from the south. It had been driven across the Limelight, and was then suddenly assailed by the orc host that pressed it towards the Anduin. All hope was lost when, unlooked for, the riders came out of the north and broke upon the rear of the enemy. Then the fortunes of battle were reversed, and the enemy was driven with slaughter over the Limelight. Eorl led his men in pursuit, and so great was the fear that went before the horsemen of the north that the invaders of the wold were also thrown into panic, and the riders hunted them over the plains of Calenarthon. The people of that region had become few since the plague, and most of those that remained had been slaughtered by the savage Easterlings. Cirion, therefore, in reward for his aid, gave Calenarthon between the Anduin and Isen to Eorl and his people. And they sent north for their wives and children and their goods and settled in that land. They named it anew the Mark of the Riders, and they called themselves the Eorlingas. But in Gondor their land was called Rohan, and its people the Rohirrim, that is, the Horse Lords. Thus Eorl became the first king of the Mark, and he chose for his dwelling a green hill before the feet of the White Mountains, that were the south wall of his land. There the Rohirrim lived afterwards as free men under their own kings and laws, but in perpetual alliance with Gondor.
Thank you, Matt. Now, we did skip reading that first paragraph here because, well, as usual, we have to skip something. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we missed.
First, we join the story of the Eotheod when they are led by Eorl the Young. While we'll get the details later, he became their lord in 2501 of the Third Age.
Now, folks, this is about 40 years after Sauron returned to Dol Guldur, ending the Watchful Peace. It's also a little less than 40 years after Smeagol obtained the One Ring, and it's 8 years before Celebrian's capture and torture by the orcs, just to sort of fit these moments on the timeline for you.
We also get a clear description of where on the map they've settled here, near the sources of the Great River, that is, the Anduin. Mm-hmm. And it's somewhere between the Misty Mountains and Mirkwood, near the very northern end of the Misty Mountains.
Now, in Unfinished Tales, in the story of Cirion and Eorl, which we're going to end up doing like a 7 or 8 episode sidebar on coming up, we get more detail about the precise location. The new land of the Eotheod lay north of Mirkwood, between the Misty Mountains westward and the Forest River eastward. Southward, it extended to the confluence of the 2 short rivers that they named Graelyn and Langwell. Graelyn flowed down from Ered Mithrin, the Grey Mountains, but Langwell came from the Misty Mountains. And this name it bore because it was the source of the Anduin, which, from its junction with Graelyn, they called Langflood.
The footnote to this passage says, these rivers, unnamed, are marked on the map to the Lord of the Rings. The Graelyn is there shown as having 2 tributary branches.
But, we hear you say, I can see the names of the rivers on my map. Whatever does Christopher mean? Well, if you have a map from a more recent edition, you absolutely can.
But when Christopher Tolkien published Unfinished Tales, the existing map in The Lord of the Rings did not have these rivers named.
And that's what the footnote's referring to. Recall, it was Christopher himself who drew that original map in 1953. In 1980, for Unfinished Tales, he completely redid the map, explaining, my first intention was to include in this book the map that accompanies The Lord of the Rings, with the addition to it of further names. But it seemed to me on reflection that it would be better to copy my original map and take the opportunity to remedy some of its minor defects, to remedy the major ones being beyond my powers.
So yes, in remedying those minor defects, Christopher has now given us the names of those rivers in their correct locations. And where is that location? way, way, way north.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the next paragraph in Unfinished Tales tells us that while it was 450 miles in a straight line from the confluence of those rivers to the northern border of Gondor, where the Limelight reaches the Anduin, it was 800 miles from the Eotheod to Minas Tirith.
That is roughly the distance from Oxford, England to Florence, Italy. So it's a very long way, and that distance will be relevant later, I promise you.
Then we learn when these people settled there, in the days of King Eorl II.
Okay, that definitely puts us on the timeline, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. Now, this is the guy that the Council of Gondor chose to become king after the death of King Ondoher and his sons in the battle with the Wainwriters.
That's right. Instead of Arvedwi, whose claim was rejected, as Dawn and I talked about extensively last month on the podcast. Now, King Eorl II reigned in Gondor from Third Age 1945 to 2043, so that means they settled sometime in that time frame.
Or if we look at the Tale of Years, we get the exact year, which is 1977 of the Third Age.
Thank you for being precise. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for making me look silly. I appreciate it. All right.
No, 1970s. Just remember, it's the same year that Star Wars came out in our,
there you go.
Our own timeline.
During the Carter presidency.
So
yeah.
Yes.
During the reign of King Jimmy Carter. That's an interesting picture. All right. Why did they move there and why then? Well, later in that same paragraph, we learned that they were getting a bit crowded in their earlier home. There were many men in the Middle Vales of Anduin.
Yeah, that area surrounding the Anduin, but further south between the Carrick to the north and the Gladden to the south. So when the Witch King was overthrown in 1975, they headed north, wiped out what was left of the forces of Angmar, and settled there in the north.
That's right. I have a theory here, though. It wasn't just that they'd heard about the defeat of the Witch King. Yeah. Here, I think if we go back to that part of Appendix A, we read about the forces that Gondor sent to help Arthedain. I mean, too late for Arthedain. But in that description, we read, most of all, the horses were praised, for many of them came from the Vales of Anduin, and with them were riders tall and fair and proud princes of Rhovanion, who, of course, you know, the folks from Rhovanion were the Northmen who were kin. That is to say, those were who the Eotheod came from.
Yes, I think that is ironclad there. I totally agree. So these ancestors of Rohan, they're part of the force that defeated the Witch King in the Battle of Fornost. And so, of course, they would know about this. They would know that the Witch King was defeated.
That's right.
And with the Witch King gone, and they've got a crowded homeland in the middles of the Vales of Anduin, they say, hey, let's move up north.
I mean, we might have to, sew together some jackets, build a little warmer homes or something, but, it'll be all right.
It's not like there's dragons or anything up there, What could possibly go wrong?
I don't know anything about the Ered Mithrin and, the Withered Heath or anything like that. So we also learn more about the history and lineage of the people that make up the Eotheod. And while we already know about their descent from the Northmen, the kings of Rhovanion, what do you make of this bit, Matt? This kind of threw me for a bit. They were described as being close akin to the Beornings and the men of the West Eaves of the Forest.
Yeah. Now, you guys looked at this back in episode 348 when we first encountered the Northmen in the history of Gondor, but a quick reminder is in order. So when the Edain first went west, there were three houses: the House of Beor, the House of Hador, and the House of Haleth.
And in Of Dwarves and Men, that's an essay found in the Peoples of Middle-earth, we learned that the folk of Beor were the first men to enter Beleriand, and that they were a small people. And it's after that we read about three different hosts of the folk of Hador coming up from the south. And here's the quote that tells us a little bit about that. These men, it seems, had come westward until faced by the great Greenwood, that would of course be Mirkwood, and then had divided, some reaching the Anduin and passing thence northward up the vales, some passing between the north eaves of the wood and the Ered Mithrin. Only a small part of this people, already very numerous and divided into many tribes, had then passed into Eriador and so come at last to Beleriand. They were brave and loyal folk, true-hearted, haters of Morgoth and his servants. But we do get sort of the implication that some of them came to the south end and went up the Vales of Anduin, so those are going to be the men of the eaves of the forest, and others would have gone, north between the wood and Ered Mithrin? Well, that's going to end up getting you up near where Lake Town is and things like that. Yeah. So I think that's what we're talking about here in terms of the kin.
And of course, these are also horsemen who loved best the plains. Yeah. And that's a nod, of course, towards their eventual future as the Rohirrim.
Mm-hmm.
And all that's just in the first paragraph. But let's pick up where I started reading. Yeah, we're getting really deep here. Yeah. The threat to Gondor in 2510 is of the Easterlings.
That's right. Now, we've talked about this before, and because we're going to talk about it much more at length when we cover Cirion and Eorl next, we're going to skip the details here and stay just with the summary version that's provided in the text. So we're not going to go super deep. Calanarthon was overrun, and again, that's the region we now know of as Rohan. And Cirion sent for help, and that's where this 800-mile distance comes into play, because it's really hard to get a message up there.
Yeah, because even though there was a long friendship between Gondor and the Northmen, the distance was also pretty long. We'll get to
it was.
We'll get to how those tidings come to Eorl, but here in the short version, it's enough to know that he led out a host of riders to come to Gondor's rescue. Mm-hmm. And after that, we get the brief description of the Battle of the Field of Celebrant that comes next. First, learning that Celebrant is the name of the land between the river Silverlode, which goes through the land of Lorien, by the way, and the Limelight, which comes out of the north end of Fangorn Forest.
That's right. Now, a little word nerdery here before we go on. That's sort of my role here now. Celebrant is Sindarin, with the elements Celeb, meaning silver, as in Celeborn and Celebrimbor, and Rant, meaning course. So it's the silver course. It's also known as the Silver Lode, and the field, of course, is named after the river, the Field of Celebrant.
And then, of course, the horsemen, not surprisingly, learned that Gondor was in serious trouble here. They're cut off from the south, and with an army of orcs coming on from the west, they're getting pushed toward the river.
Yeah. And that is when the Eotheod saves the day and slaughters the orcs, to the point that even the Easterlings were panicking. Oh, man, look, they're killing all the orcs. We better run. So they run, and the riders chase them down. And with that in mind, we move on quickly in this very short version of the story to the bit where the Eotheod are given Calanarthon, and that's between the Anduin and the Isen rivers north of the White Mountains.
Yeah, and we're told the people that lived in these lands had become few since the plague, which that was in 1636. Yeah, 900 years before. Yeah. So they've had time to dwindle, but apparently they did not bounce back from that one.
It's not.
Yeah, and the few that had stayed there were mostly killed by the Easterlings, so the land's pretty bare right now.
Now, I know it says that, right? I mean, that's certainly the indication that the lands are empty, but I think there are going to be some folks, maybe of Dunlending descent, who don't really feel like the land was entirely empty.
Yeah, that's less empty than they make it out to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also don't want to forget, even though they don't come up in this version of the story at all, but the wild men, Khan and his people living in the White Mountains. So, I mean, I appreciate where Gondor is coming from here, but the land is not entirely empty. So it's just empty of your people.
It definitely, reading between the lines, I think we're led to believe there was a significant population of Gondorians there that are no longer there.
That's correct. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. The people of that region to become few, they mean the Gondorian people that become few. Yeah.
Right.
So
presumably, they don't really talk about it, but presumably the Dunlendings and Druidine would also be affected by the plague, I would think.
Oh, yeah, they would have been affected by the plague. And it was mostly empty, in fairness. This wasn't where the bulk of the Dunlendings lived. I mean, this was never Dunland.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And the wild men, Hanbury Hans people, as we know them in The Lord of the Rings, they were never a very numerous people. So it's certainly fair to say it was mostly empty land. But, we'll get there. We'll definitely
be talking more about that. We'll get,
Eorl and the riders, of course, then after the victory and after the gift of Calanarthon, send for their families, and the entire people move from the north down here to the Mark of the Riders. And this naming stuff is worth taking a very quick look ahead to Cirion and Eorl just to discuss here. Right after Cirion and Eorl talk through the terms of this gift, we read that Eorl took the title of King of the Mark of the Riders. But in the event, it was some while before the Rohirrim took possession of the land. And during his life, Eorl was known as Lord of the Eotheod and King of Calanarthon. The term mark signified a borderland, especially one serving as a defense of the inner lands of a realm. The Sindarin names Rohan for the mark and Rohirrim for the people were devised first by Halas, son and successor of Cirion, but were often used not only in Gondor, but by the Eotheod themselves.
Yeah, and we'll dig into more on the names when we get there in Cirion and Eorl, of course. The details are in footnote 49, so it might be a little bit before we get there.
Exactly. So just give you a little teaser now. That's right.
Yeah. But Eorl becomes the first king, though he was only known as King of the Mark or King of Calenarthon, not the King of Rohan. And we'll get a mention of the location of the new capital as well, a green hill before the feet of the White Mountains, which sounds like the hill upon which the city of Edoras is built, and eventually the Hall of Meduseld.
It does, doesn't it? But you'd be wrong.
But it's not.
If you thought it was. That's right. Correct. It is not. In Unfinished Tales, we encounter the name of a town that serves as the base of the third marshal of the Rittermark. That's the position that Eomer holds when we meet him during the time of the War of the Ring. That town is called Aldburg, and it's located in the Fold, which is a region in the middle of Rohan, actually between the Westfold and Eastfold. And the author's note for that passage tells us something very interesting. Here, Eorl had his house. It passed after Bregos, son of Eorl, removed to Edoras into the hands of Eofor, third son of Brego, from whom Eomund, father of Eomer, claimed descent. The Fold was part of the king's lands, but Aldburg remained the most convenient base for the muster of the Eastmark. So this is not Edoras that we read about here in the text. It is Aldburg.
Correct.
Did you know that, Matt? Or did I
did actually.
Okay,
no,
good.
I
thought you
did know that.
You've got a lot of knowledge on the Rohirrim, and I didn't think I'd slip one by you.
Yeah, I am a big fan of the Rohirrim, which is obviously, I think that's why you penciled me in for this segment.
I think it is. Yes.
It wasn't just scheduling reasons, but
no, it's actually the other reason why I moved. Numerically, I should have continued on with Appendix A1 because I haven't finished that yet. Aragorn and Arwen has been moved to a much later section so that I could jump straight into the Rohirrim with you.
That's I will say Aragorn and Arwen is also a really, really good one.
It really is. I'm going to be covering that with Dr. Sarah Brown later this season.
That's going to be really good. Teaser, folks. It's real good. So wherever Eorl built his home, what matters is that these people, the Eorlingas, formerly the Eotheod, were people free under their own leadership, but allied with Gondor.
That's right. And folks, we are free people under our own leadership, but we still need to take an ad break. We'll be back in a little bit. Now, soon we'll get back to the many lords and warriors and many fair and valiant women in the songs of Rohan. But before we do, we want to remind you that there is a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just us.
The PPP has an amazing listener community, and they're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Mm-hmm. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony podcast. Follow the page to get news, but you're going to want to join the group for some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at prancingponypod.
That's right. And if you want daily Tolkien content, check out Today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. It's my short format daily show with everything from Word Nerd Wednesday to First Age Friday. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes. And follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media.
Well, Alan, we've gone entirely too long without talking about the Rohirrim. So please get us back into the text.
Even a minute or two is too long.
Yes, it's too long.
All right. Leod was the name of Eorl's father. He was a tamer of wild horses, for there were many at that time in the land. He captured a white foal, and it grew quickly to a horse, strong and fair and proud. No man could tame it. When Leod dared to mount it, it bore him away, and at last threw him, and Leod's head struck a rock, and so he died. He was then only 42 years old, and his son a youth of 16. Eorl vowed that he would avenge his father. He hunted long for the horse, and at last he caught sight of him, and his companions expected that he would try to come within bowshot and kill him. But when they drew near, Eorl stood up and called in a loud voice, "Come hither, Mansbane, and get a new name." To their wonder, the horse looked towards Eorl and came and stood before him. And Eorl said, Felaróf, I name you. You loved your freedom, and I do not blame you for that. But now you owe me a great weregild, and you shall surrender your freedom to me until your life's end." Then Eorl mounted him, and Felaróf submitted. And Eorl rode him home without bit or bridle, and he rode him in like fashion ever after. The horse understood all that men said, though he would allow no man but Eorl to mount him. It was upon Felaróf that Eorl rode to the field of Celebrant, for that horse proved as long-lived as men, and so were his descendants. These were the Miras, who would bear no one but the king of the Mark or his sons until the time of Shadowfax. Men said of them that Bema, whom the Eldar call Orome, must have brought their sire from west over sea. Oh, I love that story of Felaróf.
It's a fun story.
So good.
Now, we skipped the first paragraph that mentions a few of the early heroes of the Eotheod, but we should give them their due here in this discussion.
Absolutely. First, though the brief text here in Appendix A focuses on the kings of Rohan and not their queens or other women of Rohan or the Eotheod, I do love how the text here makes it absolutely crystal clear there were many fair and valiant women, and that they are named in the songs that the people of Rohan sing about their time in the north.
Yeah, and it makes me curious, to hear some of those stories. Like, there's so many times.
I want to know those stories.
Yeah. There's so many times where I think, like, what if Tolkien was, nowadays, if you have a successful book, you're just an author and you just write all the time. Like,
all
what
the
if
time. He wouldn't have to do anything else. He wouldn't be teaching.
What if he didn't have to
grading papers?
Yeah. Right? Yeah, grading papers. Goodness. But it is cool to know that they exist, and that Éowyn comes from a people who historically recognize the valor and bravery of their own women.
That's right. I mean, it wasn't a surprise that she was a shield maiden. That was a known role. And that's because we have a history here. I just want to hear more. It kind of bums me out that we only get stories of really two of these heroes of the North here in this moment. That is to say, prior to them becoming the Rohirrim. And the first is the story of Frumgar, the chieftain who led them from their home in the Central Vales of Anduin up north. And we mentioned this earlier in talking about their move in Third Age 1977 after the defeat of the Witch King.
Of course, this was only 120 years after Marhuini, son of Marhari, led some of the Northmen to the Anduin and established the Eotheod. It seems likely that Frumgar is Marhuini's great-grandson and was the fourth lord of the Eotheod when he led them north.
That's right. Now, it's also possible that the first and only city that they built in the north, Framsburg, was named after Frumgar's son, Fram. But we'll get to him next because he's the other story in the north. Fram the Dragon Slayer. I say Fram. It's Fram the Dragon Slayer. Fram the Dwarf Taunter. I love this guy.
Yes. Yeah. He's said to have killed the dragon Scatha, a long worm hailing from the arid Mithrin, the Grey Mountains, that ran east-west from the Misty Mountains north of Mirkwood.
Mm-hmm.
The text here doesn't give us any clues about Scatha, but we know from the chapter Many Partings that he had a horn in his hoard that had been made by the dwarves.
That's right. Now, in the recently released collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien, we actually get to read there 3 versions of a poem called Scatha the Worm, written in 1954 while Tolkien was correcting The Return of the King for publication.
Back then, he changed the story of the horn that Éowyn gave to Merry. Originally, it was made for our forefathers by the dwarves. Then he changed his mind and had it made by the dwarves and found in the hoard of Scatha the Worm.
And there, in the poems, Scatha is described. He was gray, he was cold, he was silent, and he was blind. He crawled like a slow creeping death, too horrible to flee from. Froze men with fear in his icy breath, and then crushed them, ground them under his long white belly. Ooh, Tolkien writes some creepy stuff, doesn't he?
He does.
Man, no fire, no wings, and yet absolutely flippin' terrifying.
Yeah. But Fram's killing of Scatha didn't win him any points with the dwarves because he didn't return any of the hoard that they said belonged to them.
And more than just saying, no, sorry, you're not getting anything back, finders keepers. He goes and makes a necklace of the teeth of the dragon and sends it to the dwarves, man. That is just...
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh gosh, it's such an excellent troll job there.
Oh, it is. He's absolutely gotten under their skin here, no doubt.
Yeah. And then we get some say that I don't want to believe actually, but that the dwarves killed him for it, which I kind of buy though.
I don't want to believe it, but I can believe it. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that I'm thinking of the same dwarves that killed Thingol because he didn't want to pay them for making an Auglamere.
I mean, they've got it. Yeah, it could happen.
It depends on the dwarves, I suppose, but I don't want to think of the House of Durin acting like this. But
right, yeah. But they're cousins. They're that branch of the family, you know.
They're that branch.
That.
Oh, those guys. Oh no, Uncle so and so's coming to Thanksgiving. Oh man, I better watch out. Can I sit at the kids' table?
Right.
Well, I will say this, though, for this idea that the dwarves killed him for it. The fact that this began an animosity between the Eotheod and the dwarves really does shed a bit more light on the way Eomer interacts with Gimli when his Eorl encounters the Three Hunters in The Lord of the Rings. You know, there's automatically a bit more hostility and suspicion, isn't there?
There is. And it honestly kind of makes it even more sweet that Gimli would eventually settle in the glittering caves in Rohan.
And become genuinely friends. Yeah. I mean, I love their banter about the women, the pretty women.
Oh yes.
Are you ready to tell me that Galadriel's the most beautiful woman?
Yeah.
Better go get my sword because I don't think so.
I think it's Arwen. And then it's like, okay.
Fine.
Agree to disagree, whatever. You know, like, I just love that Gimli's ready to throw down with anybody over. Like, you dare say anything bad about Galadriel. But yeah, I do love that. That's one of those things you can only get from the books because it's such a small detail.
Exactly.
That, it would never make it into an adaptation. Maybe if it's a long drawn out TV series or something, but the friendship between Eomer and Gimli is pretty awesome.
I do love that. Gimli's such a good example of that. I mean, I'm thinking even of just his friendship with Legolas too, obviously.
Yeah.
Breaking so many traditions there, but fantastic stuff.
Now, before we move on, a little word nerdery on the names here. Alan, will you do the honors?
I will indeed. Well, like the Rohirric names after him, Frumgar's name is Old English, and it means chieftain, leader, or prince. And you're going to find, by the way, that a whole lot of Old English names for leader or prince or things like that. But in this case, the literal meaning of his name is first spear, which I like. And again, that's very typical in terms of what they expect from their leader or their chieftain. It's interesting, though, in particular, because Frumgar is the first lord of the Eotheod with an Old English name. His ancestors, Forthwini and Marchwini, one of the ones you mentioned earlier, as well as the ones before them, all had names in Gothic. And for a little bit more on that, you should go back to the discussions that Don and I had about the connections between the Northmen and the Goths as being parallel to the connections between the Rohirrim and Old English. It's really fascinating because Tolkien, again, because of his linguistics background, is creating these sort of histories so that we can actually see the Northmen who are in Gothic become the Rohirrim who are Old English, become connected to the hobbits who are speaking something in between and still have these memories of old words. It's really fascinating stuff. And reading his notes in the appendices on the languages is just eye-opening. It's fantastic stuff. Now, going on with more names, Fram's name is Old English for valiant, stout, or firm. And then we get Scatha. His name is based on Old English Scatha, which means injurer, enemy, or robber. And as you could probably tell just by listening to the word, it is related to the modern English verb to scathe, which we typically use only in the unscathed, right? We don't often say that something is scathed. We might say something is scathing, like a scathing review.
Yeah, right.
But typically we use it in the negative as in, I've come through that unscathed. Yeah. And now picking up where you started reading, again, we get a lot of stuff. So much before in these short paragraphs, I know.
Yeah. We get the name of Eorl's father, Leod, and we don't know how many lords of the Eotheod led them between Fram sometime early in the 21st century of the Third Age and Leod some 500 years later. But what we do know about Leod is that his name is poetic Old English for prince and that he was known for taming the wild horses that roamed the area.
That's right. And that leads us straight into the story that we did read, the story of Felaróf, though we don't get his name right away. A white foal that Leod captured when he was young and cared for and took care of as it grew, but it was untamable.
Yeah, and when Leod tried to tame it, the horse rode off through him, and the fall kills him. Mm-hmm. And that promotes Eorl to the lord of his people at the age of 16.
Wow, that is young. That is really young.
You can't barely drive a car, let alone a horse.
Seriously,
I mean, come on.
Let alone a horse. He is very young. I mean, in fact, I think he ends up being only 25 when he answers the call to go and save Gondor. Just still a very young man, especially when we see that so often these men are becoming kings and acceding to the throne when they're in their 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
It does make me think, though, that if you are a lord or a king of people, maybe you should take up, I don't know, stamp collecting or podcasting as a hobby rather than, I don't know, taming wild horses, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Maybe not bungee jumping either, for that matter.
Yeah. The heart wants what it wants, you know? He's just following the call.
That's right.
So Eorl starts out for vengeance and he hunts down the horse. But when they find him, instead of trying to kill him, Eorl calls to him and says, "Come here, man killer, and get a new name."
I love this. And, I'm thinking what a cool story this would be to do an adaptation of. I don't know, maybe just be an episode in a TV show, but because I don't know that you could stretch the whole thing into 2 hours. I mean, you could if you included the Rohirrim or the Eotheod coming down to save Gondor.
It'd be like an anthology, like an animated anthology series of Middle-earth would be kind of cool,
I do love this, though. I mean, the fact that everybody's expecting him to kill this horse. I mean, that's vengeance. Mm-hmm. That's what it is, right? You killed my father. Now prepare to die,
Yes.
my name is Eorl. You killed my father. Prepare to die. He calls out to the horse, hey, you. I'm talking here. Come over here. And the horse actually complies.
Yeah.
And Eorl does give him a new name, Felaróf, which is also Old English for very valiant, very strong.
Yeah. And Eorl here, he acknowledges that the horse loves his freedom, which who doesn't? Let's be honest. But now he owes Eorl because of the death of his father. We get that word weregild.
Yeah, word. Exactly. That's the idea of weregild. It's a price paid for causing the death of someone. And it actually comes up again in this chapter. I don't know if it'll come up in this episode. I'm not sure whether we get there or not. I am so tempted to do a long digression on the idea of weregild, but I'm going to save that for the P5. It's a really interesting concept.
Enough. Now, that price that Felaróf has to give is to give up your freedom to Eorl for the rest of your life. And Felaróf submitted, ridden by Eorl without any gear, by the way.
I love this. I mean, not only did the horse understand the speech, like hear the speech, he comprehended what it meant to the point of, okay, I do owe you this. This was, I killed your father. I'm going to go ahead and.
My bad.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Guilty as charged. The horse could understand the speech of men, but those men better not say, "Can I have a ride?" Because the answer is going to be no for everyone but Eorl.
Yeah.
And so it was 9 years later. So 9 years. So he was 25 when Eorl rode Felaróf to the Battle of the Field of Kellerant that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and that was just the beginning because he lived for another 35 years until we'll get to that later on.
Yeah, we will at some point.
But what's especially important about Felaróf is that he was the father of the Meras, the horses that bore the kings of Rohan and their heirs, and eventually, as we know, Gandalf, as Shadowfax, was one of those Meras.
That's right. And we even get the really cool mythology that Orome himself, right, the hunter of the Valar, or as they call him, Bema, brought the original sire of the Meras over here to Middle-earth from Valinor. Is this one of those some says that we believe is true?
I mean, I like it.
I do too.
It's really cool. Do know
that some creatures from Valinor have made it over here, right? I mean, we know that Orome brought Huon over, and that, he was given to Celegorm, but
Yes.
So he comes over to Middle-earth. Is it possible also that Orome brought over the sire of the Meras?
I think so. I mean, and I've seen, people theorize like, is Nahar himself, the father,
sire of the Meras.
Yeah, the sire. Yeah. So I mean, he's still a horse. Like, he's a really awesome horse, but he's still a horse. So whether that's 2 horses that Orome owned in Valinor and then their offspring dwell in Middle Earth, or, maybe Nahar's wife is a long distance relationship and she's in Middle Earth. I don't know.
Oh man, I like that. I actually, now that I think about it, there was a letter that Tolkien wrote, and I'm just looking it up right now. It's letter 268. It was written in 1965, and it was in response to the question of whether Shadowfax went with Gandalf over the sea at the end. And of course, he says, I think Shadowfax certainly went with Gandalf, though this is not stated. He explains why sometimes I don't tell you everything because, the accounts of real history, many facts are omitted. But his point is that he is, as it were, an elvish equivalent of ordinary horses. His blood came from west over sea. So I think Tolkien there is confirming what is here given as a possible mythology. So yeah, it's not even in doubt anymore. That is exactly what happened. Now, I mean, in terms of their spirits being, like the elves of horses, whether or not Orome himself brought him over, doesn't matter. They got over here somehow, and they are native to Valinor in that sense. They belong in the West. Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
That really is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know what else is awesome? The story of Helm Hammerhand, which we're about to start. And folks, I'm just going to tell you right now, I cannot promise that we will actually finish this story this episode. I want to, and we probably will, but I'm just warning you now, be ready to wait a week.
It's already getting long. Like,
I know.
And we haven't even gotten to Helm Hammerhand yet.
I know. That's wild, man. So, all right, Matt, read a little bit about Helm and Freka.
All right. Of the kings of the Mark between Eorl and Theoden, most is said of Helm Hammerhand. He was a grim man of great strength. There was at that time a man named Freka, who claimed descent from King Freowina, though he had, men said, much Dunlandish blood and was dark-haired. He grew rich and powerful, having wide lands on either side of the Adorn. Near its source he made himself a stronghold, and paid little heed to the king. Helm mistrusted him, but called him to his councils, and he came when it pleased him. To one of these councils Freka rode with many men, and he asked the hand of Helm's daughter for his son Wulf. But Helm said, "You have grown big since you were last here, but it is mostly fat, I guess." And men laughed at that, for Freka was wide in the belt. Then Freka... it's just such a great insult.
He was wide in the belt, man.
He was wide in the belt. Like, it's such a nice way to say, like, yep, he was fat.
Yeah. I mean, you could just pull the old Aragorn reference and be like, a fat innkeeper who only remembers his name because it's shouted at him all day. But yeah.
But that's so much more direct. This one, wide in the belt. Like,
wide in the belt. It's such a subtle way.
It's a poetic way to say it.
Yeah. Poetic body shaming. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah.
Then Freka fell in a rage and reviled the king, and said this at the last: "Old kings that refuse a proffered staff may fall on their knees." Helm answered, "Come, the marriage of your son is a trifle. Let Helm and Freka deal with it later. Meanwhile, the king and his council have matters of moment to consider." When the council was over, Helm stood up and laid his great hand on Freka's shoulder, saying, "The king does not permit brawls in his house, but men are freer outside." And he forced Freka to walk before him out from Edoras into the field. To Freka's men that came up, he said, "Be off. We need no hearers. We are going to speak of a private matter alone. Go and talk to my men." And they looked and saw that the king's men and his friends far outnumbered them, and they drew back. "Now, Dunlanding," said the king, "you have only Helm to deal with, alone and unarmed. But you have said much already, and it is my turn to speak. Freka, your folly has grown with your belly. You talk of a staff. If Helm dislikes a crooked staff that is thrust on him, he breaks it. So!" With that, he smote Freka such a blow with his fist that he fell back stunned and died soon after. Helm then proclaimed Freka's son and near kin the king's enemies, and they fled. For at once Helm sent many men riding to the west marches.
Oh, and now we arrive at the story of Helm Hammerhand, the story that lies at the heart of a film that, for you, dear listeners, has just come out, but for us is still a month away.
Yeah.
And so before we get into the story, I just want to tell you, kind of give you our plans, what we're doing for that, though by now maybe it'll actually be out. Matt and I are going to go and see the film, obviously, as soon as we're physically able to do so. And then we will pop in the booth and record like a 30-minute review. That will become a separate episode for you on the feed, unnumbered or numbered like 352.5 or something like that. But what we'll do is we'll only leave that up for a couple of weeks, and then we will put that in as the introductory segment for a later episode and remove it from the feed. That way, you'll get a chance to hear it right away, but then we won't mess up the feed and make it, all cluttered. We'll just put it in as a permanent element to one of the later episodes. So we're really looking forward to it, even though many of you listening to this have already seen it. So once again, the challenges of time travel.
But getting back to the text, we've skipped over a bit of the first line of the Kings of Rohan and some 200 to 250 years to 2754. But don't worry, we'll get you up to speed on those happenings later this episode.
Actually, it might not be later this episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. we're kind of long-winded today. But whenever we get there, we'll talk about the lines of the kings. But for now, we're told of Helm Hammerhand, a man described as grim and possessing great strength.
And of course, I'm going to do a little word nerdery. His name, Helm, is Old English and means protection. Obviously, helm and helmet, those are the same concepts. We're also told about another man named Freka, and that's Old English for bold man, warrior, hero. He's said to be descended from one of the kings of Rohan, Freowina, who we'll talk about later, 4 generations prior to Helm, but who appears to have been also of Dunlending origin. We talk about the dark hair. Yeah. That's a clue, because if you remember, the Rohirrim are descended from the House of Hador, which are, tall and blonde. And the fact that the Dunlendings can have dark hair suggests that they are from different descent. We do know that the ancestors of the Dunlendings, and this is something that we find in Of Dwarves and Men in the Peoples of Middle-earth, the ancestors of the Dunlendings were also the ancestors of the Haladin, the second of the 3 houses of the Edain, the reclusive ones that kept themselves separate from the Beorians and the Hadorians, and their language was different from those spoken by the others. So a little bit more on the history of these people.
Yes. Now, getting back to the story at hand, or fist here, Freka was a rich man with lands on both sides of the Adorn. That's a tributary of the Isen that began in the White Mountains and flowed northwest until it reached the Isen, halfway to the sea.
Now, in Cirion and Eorl, we'll learn that the Adorn is the western boundary of Rohan. So it's interesting that Freka had lands on both sides of it.
Yeah.
And that certainly lends even more credence to his connection to the Dunlendings.
Yeah. And his base was near the source of the Adorn in the White Mountains. And he basically set up his own little realm, ignoring Helm's kingship. He shows up when he wants to. But Helm wisely doesn't trust him, and also wisely called him to councils. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, maybe?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, I don't want this guy out on the marches of my territory being able to continue to raise power without having communication with him. So Helm calls him to a council. Freka shows up with his entourage, proposing an alliance by marriage of his son, Wulf, and Helm's unnamed daughter, who, of course, is Hera in the War of the Rohirrim. And let's just say this went over poorly.
Yeah. Helm responds with some body shaming, and Freka's not too happy about that, and he returns the favor with an old man insult. So we get fat jokes and old jokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like you and I, we could redo that and just play that part.
We probably could. I think Alan just called me fat, so there we go.
I think you just called me old every episode we've ever done.
That's true.
Don't worry, man. I'm not going to punch you, let alone kill you with one punch. You're just too valuable a co-host.
Now, Helm just wants to get on with business and suggests the two of them can handle this after the council itself is complete.
I love the way he puts it. Like, can we table this? Let's put a pin in this and come back to it.
Right. Yeah.
But then we get the confrontation itself as Helm suggests they take it outside. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure Freck is actually up for this fight, right? He's forced to walk out of the city into the fields surrounding it. I'm sort of thinking like, well, I don't really want to do this. I am a little wide in the belt and you are notorious. So I'm not sure I want to do this. But Helm sends Frecca's men away. Look, it's just going to be the two of us. And Helm reminds Frecca, it's just the two of us now. You've got me alone and unarmed.
Yeah. And Helm gets straight to the point. You've talked a lot of trash, and now I've got something to say. And you're as foolish as you are fat.
Yeah, I love the way he puts that. And again, he refers to himself in the third person. I don't think we've pointed that out yet, but look at how many times he does that. He says that let Helm and Frecca deal with it later. Then he says the king does not permit brawls in his house. Yeah. And then he says something like, you have only Helm to deal with. So if Helm dislikes a crooked staff, so he's very much a third person sort of reference to himself.
Interesting.
Which is in fact very interesting. So he uses Frecca's words about the staff against him and then one punches him. Just flat out decks him. You got to think, if you're Frecca, don't you see this coming? I mean, I don't think this is a jab. Right. A killing blow like this has to be, a massive.
There's got to be some wind up
uppercut or hook. Yeah, exactly. Brutal though. Mm-hmm.
And we read that Frecca falls and dies shortly after this, and at which point Helm declares that Frecca's son and other near family members are officially enemies of the king, and he sends riders out towards his home.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Wulf and everybody else is kind of like, we better get back to the house because he's just sent riders out to, wipe out our people. So it's definitely
it escalated quickly. Sure. Is what happened.
It escalated quickly. It sure did. Well, just as Helm declared that Frecca's son and his family members are officially enemies of the king, we are declaring that it's time for an ad break. We'll be right back. Now, folks, if you're enjoying the PPP, please consider supporting the show by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. It's what gives me the time and resources to work on making this show better every season. And when you join, you get the best Discord community around. That includes live episode recordings, hangouts every month. You also get episode postscripts, ad-free episodes, free merch, and more.
You also can become part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join us as a guest in the North Wing. So please go to patreon.com/prancingponypod to show your support and join the Fellowship of the Podcast.
Now, you can always help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and a rating on Spotify. And please recommend us to your friends.
Well, with that, let's get back to the text, and we're in for a long winter. Alan.
4 years later, 2758, great troubles came to Rohan, and no help could be sent from Gondor. For 3 fleets of the Corsairs attacked it, and there was war on all its coasts. At the same time, Rohan was again invaded from the east, and the Dunlendings, seeing their chance, came over the Isen and down from Isengard. It was soon known that Wulf was their leader. They were in great force, for they were joined by enemies of Gondor that landed in the mouths of Leftnui and Isen. The Rohirrim were defeated, and their land was overrun. And those who were not slain or enslaved fled to the dales of the mountains. Helm was driven back with great loss from the crossings of Isen, and took refuge in the Hornburg and the ravine behind, which was after known as Helm's Deep. There he was besieged. Wulf took Edoras and sat in Meduseld and called himself king. There Haleth, Helm's son, fell, last of all, defending the doors. Soon afterwards, the long winter began, and Rohan lay under snow for nearly 5 months, November to March 2758-59. Both the Rohirrim and their foes suffered grievously in the cold and in the dearth that lasted longer. In Helm's Deep, there was a great hunger after Yule, and being in despair against the king's counsel, Hama, his younger son, led men out on a sortie and foray, but they were lost in the snow. Helm grew fierce and gaunt for famine and grief, and the dread of him alone was worth many men in the defense of the burg. He would go out by himself, clad in white, and stalk like a snow troll into the camps of his enemies, and slay many men with his hands. It was believed that if he bore no weapon would bite on him. The Dunlendings said that if he could find no food, he ate men. That tale lasted long in Dunland. Helm had a great horn, and soon it was marked that before he sallied forth, he would blow a blast upon it that echoed in the deep. And then so great a fear fell on his enemies that instead of gathering to take him or kill him, they fled away down the Coombe. One night, men heard the horn blowing, but Helm did not return. In the morning there came a sun gleam, the first for long days, and they saw a white figure standing still on the dike, alone, for none of the Dunlendings dared come near. There stood Helm, dead as a stone, but his knees were unbent. Yet men said that the horn was still heard at times in the deep, and the wraith of Helm would walk among the foes of Rohan and kill men with fear. Soon after, the winter broke. Then Felaróf, son of Hild, Helm's sister, came down out of Dunharrow, to which many had fled, and with a small company of desperate men, he surprised Wulf in Meduseld and slew him, and regained Edoras. There were great floods after the snows, and the Vale of Entwash became a vast fen. The eastern invaders perished or withdrew, and there came help at last from Gondor by the roads both east and west of the mountains. Before the year 2759 was ended, the Dunlendings were driven out, even from Isengard, and then Felaróf became king. Helm was brought from the Hornburg and laid in the 9th mound. Ever after, the white Simblemena grew there most thickly, so that the mound seemed to be snow-clad. When Felaróf died, a new line of mounds was begun. Lots to unpack here. I'm excited.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Now, fast forward 4 years after the death of Freka and the declaration of his kin as foes to Helm, to the year 2758, and Rohan is in trouble.
They are indeed.
Yeah, while their mutual aid pact with Gondor is still very much a thing, Gondor isn't able to help them. That's going to be a theme, by the way.
Yeah.
Because they're currently under attack from 3 different Corsair fleets from Umbar.
That's right. Now, we talked about this from the Gondorian perspective just 2 episodes ago. This happened under the leadership of the steward Beren, and those fleets are said to have attacked as far north as the mouth of the Isen.
Yeah, but Rohan is being attacked from the east, so presumably Easterlings and by Dunlendings from Isengard.
Now wait, Isengard? How is that? I mean, Isengard's to the north of Rohan. Well, in Unfinished Tales, in the Battle of the Fords of Isen, which you and I will get to in March, we read that during the reign of King J.R.R, and that's Helm's grandfather who ruled from 2699 to 2718, the line of the Gondorian chieftains of Angernost had failed, and command of the fortress of Isengard passed into the hands of a family of the people. These, as has been said, were already long before of mixed blood, and they were now more friendly disposed to the Dunlendings than to the wild Northmen who had usurped the land. With Minas Tirith far away, they no longer had any concern.
Yeah, as it turns out, the Dunlendings, who'd been allowed into the fortress as supposed friends, had taken Isengard and killed the survivors of the ancient guards. The steward of Gondor at that time, Egelmoth, received word but couldn't do anything about it. And these Dunlendings were strengthened by enemies of Gondor, read Corsairs of Umbar, who landed at the mouths of the rivers of Lefnui and Isen.
Now, we've looked at the Isen before, right? Its mouth lay on the western shore. The Isen takes a west turn after the Fords of Isen, right? It comes down from Isengard due south, and after it hits the fords, it heads west, almost due west. Now, the Lefnui also has its source in the White Mountains, but on the southern side, and it runs down west of Pinathgelin, and it separates the Cape of Andrast from the rest of Gondor. So that means you've got Corsairs coming from the west and from the southwest of the White Mountains, pairing up with the Dunlendings coming from the north in Isengard, all while Rohan is being attacked in the east as well. This is definitely a problem.
Yeah. And it's essentially a total defeat for Rohan. Let's not underestimate how bad of a situation they've got
do
here.
not sugarcoat this. They are wiped out just about.
Yeah. Their entire land is overrun. They've got a handful of survivors flee into the mountains. Helm and his forces retreat from the crossings and go to the Hornburg, and that's what we all know as Helm's Deep.
Right. Now there, Helm is besieged, and in the meantime, Wulf takes the capital and declares himself king. I can promise, though, it'll be a short reign. Helm's eldest son, Haleth, the heir to the throne, is killed defending the doors to Medjugorje. And naming things here, Haleth is Old English for man, warrior, or hero, but it is not to be confused with Haleth of the Haladin in the First Age. In the language of the Haladin, the element Hal meant chief or guard, and her name, Haleth, appears to use the Sindarin feminine suffix eth. So same name, totally different meaning, totally different language base.
Yeah, and by the way, the name Haleth in the films was used as that's the kid that Aragorn says this is a good sword. Yeah, the son of Hama, which is the other son of Helm. So
the door word. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now the long winter begins shortly after all of this, and it's said to run from November to March. So this was a summer attack into early autumn, perhaps?
That's what I would guess. I mean, that typically makes sense. You certainly wouldn't make attacks in the winter.
I wouldn't think so,
for your own reasons, just logistically. But it does seem like they had enough time to settle in before the winter hit. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so there's snow on the ground for almost 5 full months. And like, if you look at a map of Middle Earth, this is pretty far south to have snow on the ground for 5 months.
I mean, this is like the south of France or north of Italy in terms of latitude. I mean, yes, you'll have snow there in the Alps, but you're not going to have snow at the lower elevation, certainly not for 5 months.
Yes. Now, both sides are suffering a lot here. So, it's not just the Rohirrim, and they're not just suffering in winter, but in the long term, due to the impact of things like crops and farmland, it's a bad situation for everybody.
It really is. Now, of course, Helm and his people are the ones that are under siege. They're in near starvation mode at this point. And his remaining son, and this is right after Yule, so we're talking about early January, Hama, which is Old English of home, so it's a really nice, simple name. He leads some men out on a sortie and to scavenge for some food, but they get lost in the snow and they're never heard from again. So they're dead. We never find them. So that is the moment that the legend of Helm Hammerhand is born. The grief and starvation drive him to this terrifying ferocity. And I love the way the text puts it. He's worth many men in the defense. Just his fear alone, or the fear that he sort of propagates, is a huge value in defense of the Hornburg.
Yeah, and we read that he'd go out into the camps of the Dunlendings wearing all white as camouflage in the snow and kill his enemies with his bare hands. It's so cool.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And Freck is like, yeah, he can do that.
Yeah. And an interesting bit of kind of the legend here, it says the belief that if he didn't carry a weapon couldn't harm him. That's probably not true, and I wouldn't recommend it if you ever in a battle situation. Don't go by that advice.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure I'm going to count on that to hold true. It's an interesting part of the legend. There is another part of the legend certainly not true, and that was the Dunlending belief that he ate men if he couldn't find
food. They were starving, so
they were starving, but these are men. But really, if you think that he eats men if he can't find food, how about leaving out a plate of milk and cookies?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe this guy coming to your camp during winter looking for food. Maybe he's like a Middle-earth Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Oh, well, we got him in Narnia, so let's get him in Middle-earth too. Yeah.
Except instead of bringing gifts, he's bringing death.
Death, yeah. Unless you leave out cookies. That's the trade-off.
Right. You don't want to be eaten. All you got to do is leave me some food. Right?
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah. Now, that part of the legend stuck around with the Dunlendings, but remember, these folk seem to believe the most outlandish things. Recall that they were told by Saruman that the Rohirrim burned their captives alive.
That's right. I mean, that was after the Battle of Helm's Deep, where some of them surrendered. They were terrified because they believed what Saruman had said. I don't know. It's one of those things where is this self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, right? I mean, maybe the Dunlendings believe that later lie because this part of the legend of Helm Hammerhand stuck around for so long, or maybe they really are just I don't want to say gullible people, but a people who will believe really dark myths.
Well, and I'm sure things like that, they would pop up when there's so much conflict between two peoples. Like we only see hints of it here. Yeah. But Tolkien makes it clear the Dunlendings and Rohan have a lot, even beyond what's explicitly told about. Yeah. These guys are in conflict a lot.
They really are. Yeah.
Now, a part of the legend that's definitely true, he had a great horn, and apparently he blew it before he came out to do his dirty work, which that's courage right there.
It is.
I'm coming, heads up, better hide, leave out some cookies because I'm coming.
I'm coming for you. That's right.
And I just love that, you have a successful siege. Like, you have to have a certain number of people there. Yeah. And instead of everyone banding together to kill this guy, they run away every time the horn blows.
Oh no, the horn's blowing. Go!
Get out of here.
Matt, I don't have to be faster than Helm Hammerhand. I just have to be faster than you.
That's right. Yeah, that's their motto there. Yeah.
It really is. But sadly, one night after the horn blows and Helm leaves, he didn't come back. And when the sun rose, and it was the first time that there was a nice clear sunrise too, right? The weather finally starting to take a change. They could see a man standing frozen on the dike, and it was Helm, dead, but standing upright. Terrifying the Dunlendings, and frankly terrifying me. That's a pretty intense imagination to see, a dead man standing there on the dike ready to kill you, but he's dead. Yeah. More legend. I love this. The horn would then be heard at other times, and when that happened, his wraith would go out and kill men with fear alone. I want to talk a little bit about that in light particularly of a decision that one adaptation made. Oh, and in this case, it's not a movie, it's not a television show, it's the video game. And I can't remember now if it's Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War. I think it's Shadow of War. Okay, so it's the
Shadow
second one.
of War is the Helm.
Yeah. It's the one where all the people, you get a ring, and you get a ring, and you get a ring.
Everybody. Isildur's a Nazgul. Everybody gets to be a Nazgul.
That's right. And in that game, they make Helm Hammerhand into a ring wraith.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But talk about this idea of him actually being a wraith. Legendary, real. How does this work? What's the mechanics behind it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a world where wraiths exist, like there's precedent there. Like, there's obviously the ring wraiths, but I mean,
but those, of course, were mortal men who aren't really dead,
right? Yeah, but I mean, even think of the army of the dead, the dead men of Dunharrow. Like, this is a world where that's a thing. I don't know. I mean, Dunlendings and Rohirrim do have some mixed ancestry and everything. So the dead men of Dunharrow, that's a legend that would feasibly pass to the Dunlendings. So it's not like
that's true.
The idea of spiritual wraith-like beings.
The men of the mountain were in fact Dunlending, or at least Dunlending
right. Yeah.
mix.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
I like to think that. I still struggle with it because of the whole gift of Iluvatar thing. Like the oath breakers, that is to say the men of the mountain, the dead men of Dunharrow, are only there because they broke an oath. And Isildur's curse, which called on Eru essentially it didn't directly call on him, but any oath is going to sort of, involve that. And they're punished by the gift of Iluvatar being withdrawn until they, fulfill their oath. But you do have other wraiths, right? You have the Barrow Wights, similar kind of concept, the idea of these spirits, because in theory, the spirits of men upon their death are supposed to leave.
Yes.
Go to a kind of a waiting room in the halls of Mandas before they get shipped off to where
before they
the
go
elves
on.
know not.
Yeah.
And we know, and I'll have to look this up, but we know that elves can refuse their call to Mandos and remain. And sometimes the ones that have turned bad, they just flee to Morgoth or to Sauron. And that's a terrifying thought. But can men do that? And I don't know that there's evidence to suggest that men's spirits can actually do that without outside interference. In the case of the Barrow-wights, without the Witch King doing some sort of terrifying something and basically sending those spirits over there. But all the whites are they're bad guys, and Helm's not a great guy. He's sort of a dark, what would you call him, right? He's not a traditional hero. He's sort of an anti-hero in a way, but he's still a good guy in the sense that he wouldn't be a ring wraith. He wouldn't be a Barrow-wight, and he wouldn't be an Oathbreaker. And those are the only examples I can think of. So yeah.
But I mean, this is how legends are born, though. And I think it's clear from the way Tolkien phrases it too. Like, this is a legend. Like, he's not saying as the author and like the recounter of the story. Like, he makes it very clear, this is a legend among the Dunlendings, not that we are literally supposed to take it that.
Well, but so many times we are supposed to take the some say,
it's
thing
true.
Seriously.
That's where we have to use our discretion.
Exactly. We do. And this one says specifically, yet men said that the horn was still heard. And that's different from the whole some say, because I get the feeling when he says, some say that Tuor was counted among the elves, or some say that this or that.
Yeah. It's kind of like,
it's more like
and
historians.
That's true.
Some historians, some, people who write these accounts have said that this is true, as opposed to some of the men who, as we know, are kind of idiots. I mean, so I think, I like the myth, but I think it's truly just a legend in this case. Sure. But it's a lovely legend to have. Yeah.
Now, coming back to the text, winter, as it does always, eventually, it breaks. Unless you're in Narnia. That's another Narnia reference. There we go. But winter breaks, and a few of the survivors get together to form a small company of desperate men.
That's right. Now, this company of men is led by Felaróf, which is Old English for surviving lord. The elements are Freya, lord or master, which we've seen also in Freowina, and Laf, which means leaving. And he is the son of Helm's sister, Hild. And they were able to take Eorl by surprise and kill Wulf, who, it was about time.
And as the spring came, the circumstances turned against the invaders. Help comes from Gondor by roads on both sides of the mountains.
I love that. There's no getting out now. Yeah.
Yeah. And before the end of 2759, all the Dunlendings were gone, including the ones at Isengard. And Felaróf Hildason was installed as king of Rohan, beginning the second line of kings. Now, that is the line that Theoden will be of. So in
fact, Theoden will be the end of the second line.
He will be the end. Yes. Yeah.
That's right. So the body of Helm, speaking of the end of the line, the body of Helm was put to rest in the 9th mound on the west, which marked the end of the first line. And symbolically, Cymbalmina, or Evermind, grew there more thickly so that the hill looked like it was covered with snow. Though I have to say, one would imagine that Helm is pretty dang tired of the snow by now. Like, get the snow off my mound. I want it to be spring again, please.
But it's such striking imagery. I mean,
it is, isn't it? It really is.
Now, interestingly, all of this about Helm was developed late in the draft process for Tolkien. As we read in The Peoples of Middle-earth, The Making of Appendix A, Tolkien's first run through the House of Eorl was primarily concerned with the elaboration of the chronology in detail, and the text consists only of the names of the kings and their dates, with notes added to a few of them.
And then we read that in the note on Helm, however, is seen the first appearance of the tale told in Appendix A, very hastily written and still undeveloped. In his day, speaking of Helm, there was an invasion from west of Dunlanders and of south Gondor by pirates and by Easterlings and orcs. In 2758, in the long winter, they took refuge in Helm's Deep. Both his sons, Hama and Haleth, were killed, lost in snow. Notice slightly different name for Haleth instead of that, and also that both of his sons died in the snow. Tolkien continues, at his death there was in the kingdom an upstart king, Wulf, not of Eorl's line, who with the help of Dunlanders tried to seize the throne. Eventually, Felaróf, son of Hild, his sister, and nearest heir, was victorious and became king. A new line of mounds was started to symbolize break in direct line. Very undeveloped, right? You can sort of see him getting these ideas together. It's really interesting. I love looking at the behind the scenes and sort of seeing how he builds these storylines. Certainly the early versions of the Line of Kings, as we'll get to, were very bare.
Yes.
The bag was brought from the Hornburg and laid in the ninth mound. Ever after, the white envelopes grew there most thickly, so that the mound seemed to be snow-clad. When Barliman died, well, we were all in trouble. Matt, what do we have in Barliman's bag tonight?
So Brian in Missouri is asking us about, this is appropriately timed here, about the War of the Rohirrim movie. With it coming out in December, what are you most eager to see adapted from this story? And do you have any predictions?
Okay. This is perfectly timed. I mean, obviously, we've had this in the bag here for a few weeks, actually a couple of months, I think. And we pulled it out for this episode because we're talking about the exact moments in the film, and because the movie just came out 2 days ago.
Yeah, so we're giving predictions as we're recording this over a month ahead of time. And
we
so
really are honestly recording this well ahead of time, as you know. Please, these predictions are predictions.
You guys can tell immediately how wrong or right we are on our predictions.
That's right. All right, I guess we'll start with the easy part first. What are we looking forward to in the story? Oh, man, all of it?
Yeah. So this is one of those things where I feel like seeing some footage at New York Comic-Con helps me out a little bit, because the Wraith mode Helm, as I would call it, like it's the legend of the Wraith, not he's like Shadow of Mordor, like we said.
I'm hearing Jack Black singing "The Legend of the Wraith" is past due.
I got that reference.
I'm so glad you did. Nice. A little School of Rock right there.
Yeah, I like it. I need to show that movie to my kids. But yeah, the seeing what was hinted at in that clip is seeing how the legend of the Wraith of Helm Hammerhand is born. And like there's only a couple of them, but like the sound design for Helm's punch was just like really satisfying, and the sound design really stuck out to me as I was seeing footage there in New York.
I think that's something that when you're talking about an animated film in particular, the sound design is going to be really crucial, even more so than in live action.
Well, and so in one of my interviews from New York Comic-Con was with Jason DeMarco, who's one of the producers of the film.
Yeah, we met him at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, he was on the panel that I was on there, and he talked about at New York how they had folks from Park Road Post working on this film that had worked on all the other Middle-earth films. They, because they have this special passion for Middle-earth, they put a lot of heart and soul into it. And he said that there's no way any other animated film you don't get this level of sound design.
Oh, that's great. Great.
So yeah, I was like, there were moments I was, just in the short bit that I was sitting there in the audience, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing.
Oh, I cannot wait. That's really, really exciting to hear, man. Yeah. What am I looking forward to the most? For me, obviously, I say obviously, but it's only obvious to people who really, really know me and the way I like to see adaptations. The moments that are most faithful to the text are the things I'm looking forward to seeing the most. So I really want to see the exact representation of Helm and Freka walking outside of Eorl and him dismissing his guys and saying, go stand over there, talk to my guys, and having him use the words that are here because they're great words.
Yeah.
He's insulting them, but in a way that we don't talk like this anymore. And that's the whole point. We don't want these people to talk like us. We want that archaism and that sort of old feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, keeping in mind, this is hundreds of years before The Lord of the Rings.
Right.
So we want it to sound even older than that.
Right.
So those are the things I'm looking forward to the most. Literal moments from the book. Yeah. Literal moments from the story translated.
Yeah. I also am hoping that the language is something that I think can be very tricky for writers and, to get that.
Yeah. So that it doesn't come off sounding stilted or fake.
Yes. Yeah. It's an art form.
It's a fine line to draw.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be tough on the voice actors because you've got to be able to convey this archaic sounding thing without sounding like you're just trying to pretend.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a hard job all around, and I'm looking forward to it. Predictions.
Yeah.
I predict I'm going to be annoyed by the Mumak. No, I liked seeing that moment in the trailer that we saw in San Diego. We got about a 5-minute clip at San Diego Comic-Con that included the Mumak. And it was impressive looking and terrifying. And I can see where they're going with the story because we know that the 3 fleets of the Corsairs of Umbar were, invading Gondor, and that one of them landed as far north as the mouths of the Ison. So, okay. But I don't know if the fleets of the Corsairs ever actually transported their Mumak, their Mumakil, on ships.
It's interesting because I've done some looking into this and talking with other folks who are more educated on like real world stuff.
Yeah. I know. I want to talk to Brett Devereaux about this, right? We had him on.
All of my research is in Middle Earth, which can feel real, which is the magic of it. But
feels very real. Yeah.
But yeah, so because I thought of it as, like there's the Corsairs of Umbar, they're from Harad. They have Mumaks there. They have Mumakil there. And Kelly from Happy Hobbit actually pointed out to me that there is an instance of Caesar transporting war elephants by ship. For a certain war. So I was like, that sounds good to me. So I don't know.
I don't know how you keep them from moving around too much on the boats. I mean, because you can imagine that would have a pretty high failure rate.
So there is that like 4-year gap too that we don't know what happens.
I mean, they could definitely pull a sort of Hannibal over the Alps kind of thing and bring the Mumakil over the White Mountains. I don't know. My prediction, that was not obviously a very serious prediction, but my prediction is that, for a specific prediction, is that Hera, the unnamed daughter in the book, will end up being a part of that small group of people who go in after Helm's death and end up killing Wulf. I don't know if she himself will do that or not, or if it'll be Felaróf, but I think she's going to be in that band of people, and I'm excited to see that. Yeah. Because again, valiant women, definitely a thing. I'm really annoyed at these people who like, oh, I don't understand why you have to have a girl boss, blah, blah, blah. Dude, the Rohirrim and the Eotheod before them and the Northmen before them had girl bosses, so just shut up. Right?
Right. No, I mean, we just read the line.
We just read
verbatim.
That.
We're verbatim in this episode. Yeah, I think the fate of Hera is kind of a big. I don't necessarily have a prediction for it, but like because we don't know what happened to her. Like we know the rest of Helm's line is wiped out, but like what happens to the daughter? I think Saruman's involved. Like way before it was revealed, I had predicted that Saruman was going to show up at the end, and that's been spoiled by the trailer.
It has,
but yeah, I think that's probably going to be a pretty small thing. Like
I think it's going to be very small because didn't we hear recently that they're actually using Christopher Lee's voice, not AI generated, but actual audio that was captured but not used for the Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah, archival footage.
I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, I may have gripes about the idea that they're just sort of going back to that well, but I think for this it fits.
For this, yes. If it's anything more than a cameo, like and by cameo I mean like the lightest cameo.
Yeah,
like
60 seconds on screen at the most. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like if like I'm expecting it to be a phrase or two at most.
Yeah, I agree.
Like 2 lines of dialogue or something.
Maybe. Yeah.
But anything more where it's like, oh, he's gonna be in a scene, a 5-minute scene or something like that, then I cross into, okay, you need to recast because when it comes down to it, it's kind of like, the Númenorian kings. Like there comes a time and that time comes to an end. And when an actor passes away, it's sad and we miss them and we wish that we could see them again. But at the end of the day, like recreating a voice in AI, it's not Christopher Lee performing
it. But they've said they're not going to do that. So I got to have to trust them on that.
Exactly. So I'm sorry, I'm getting on my AI soapbox a little bit.
Trust me, there's barely room on that soapbox because I've been standing on it for a long time. Yeah.
But yeah, so I have a certain level of trust that they'll want to do it right and do it in a way that
I think the
honors
people involved,
him.
especially with Philippa Boyan's involvement, You know, I mean, her, being so very close to the production of the Jackson films. I mean, she and Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson were the three writers for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she's going to be super respectful of that. She's made it clear there's not going to be any AI involved. So I'm excited about that.
Here's a fun prediction that I'm curious to see how it goes off. I wonder where it will rack up. Okay, this isn't a prediction, the first part here, but I wonder where it will stack up against. The movie it's going up against is Craven, which is another one of those Sony Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man in it.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how it does against that, because it is animated. Like, I think that will be a barrier for some people.
Sadly. Yeah.
But if it gets good reviews, I could see it having some legs when it comes to the box office. And I've looked into this because this is just stuff that I find interesting. And anime does not have this like really, heavy hitter box office historically. Like, no, as far as the charts, like I could see this movie climbing up the charts of all-time anime movies in the US pretty easily, especially if it gets good reviews. I don't know how it'll do generally. I wonder if it's been made public yet, like what the budget is on it. But because I could see this being, it's definitely not the expense of.
No, an animated film will not cost as much as a live action film.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I could see this being a well-performing for what it is and everything. Like, I think
I'm excited. I really am looking forward to it. And I know we're still recording this way in advance of the movie's release, but you and I are going to, by the time this is released, by the time this episode is heard by people, you and I will have seen the movie. We will be working on our review, and folks, you will get that really, really soon. For now, though, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Now, we're going to be off the next 2 weeks for the winter holidays. I'm so sorry. It's the long winter. We hope you don't starve to death. We hope that the Dun-Dun-Dings leave out milk and cookies for you. But please be sure to come back in 3 weeks when we finish up Appendix A2, The House of Eorl, before beginning our long run through the story of Cirion and Eorl.
Now, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP as always. Editor Jordan Rannells, Barlaman Becca Davis, Social Media Manager Casey Hilsey, Event and Patreon Community Coordinator Katie McKenna, Graphic Artist Megan Collins, and Website Guru Phil Dean.
Now, please take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. That's where you'll find show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony Ponderings, our online storefront where you can get PPP merch, including all the really cool episode artwork that Megan's done for the PPP over the last 2 seasons. And Matt, have you seen the Appendix A designs that she's done?
I have not yet, no.
We've got the Gondor / Númenor A, we've got the Rohan A and the Durin A. Oh, they are awesome. They are awesome.
I like that. I like it. Now, you'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast is, after all, a podcast about the books. So if you're interested in a book we mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. And we do get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
Indeed we do. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, June in Ireland, Zaksu in Illinois, Sarah in New Jersey, Joshua in Massachusetts, Lucy in Texas, and Keith in Alabama.
There's also Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, Olivia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, Kevin in Massachusetts, Julie in Washington, Bruce in California, Joe in Maryland, and Nathan in Arizona. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed, thank you very, very much.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, well, your cookies and milk for Helm, to Barlaman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
And if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us. Please be sure to still email the question to Barliman, though.
That's right. Now, even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable, there is still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able. As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
This is the end. We are going. We are leaving now. Goodbye.